Hello, my name is Gurleen Popli. I'm a senior lecturer in the Department of Economics at the University of Sheffield. Today, I will talk about my research on the ethnic differences in early labor market outcomes of women. To begin with, I want to briefly tell you about my research. I am an applied econometrician, which means I work with data and do quantitative work. My specific areas of research are labor economics and economics of education. The main research topics I work on are exploring and understanding inequalities in the labor market with a focus on gender and ethnicity based inequalities. I have worked on child poverty and how it impacts the early years of development. Most recently, I have been researching youth unemployment with an aim to understand how decisions made at the cusp of school to work transition impact the labor market outcomes of the young people. In 2020, I was awarded the prestigious Leverhulme Trust Research Fellowship to work on racial differences in the school to work transition. The focus of this work is to understand the ethnic inequalities in youth unemployment. In 2021, I was invited to give evidence to the House of Lords Committee on Youth Unemployment. Today, I will talk about my work funded by the Leverhulme Trust, with the focus of my talk being ethnic differences in early labor market outcomes of women. Background to today's talk. The labor force participation of women in the UK has increased significantly over the last 50 years. While in 1971, 55% of the women were economically active, that is, they were working or actively looking for a job, by 2022, this had increased to 75% of the women. This is compared to an 80% participation rate of men in 2022. The higher participation of women in the labor force is, however, not uniform across all ethnic groups. Ethnic minority women, relative to their white peers, have significantly higher rates of economic inactivity. In 2022, while the economic inactivity rate for white women was 23%, for ethnic minority women, it varied from 27% for Indian women to 51% for Pakistani women. Half of Pakistani women do not engage in the labor market. Non-participation of ethnic minority women not only threatens their economic independence, but also hinders their social and cultural integration. In this presentation, I will discuss different factors that explain the inactivity rates among women, which might be used to explain the gap in the inactivity rates between white women and ethnic minority women. The focus of the talk would be young women between the ages of 25 and 34. Most young people have completed their education by the age of 25 and start to fully engage with the labor market at that age. Outcomes over these early years have important implications for future engagement in the labor market. We start by looking at what explains economic inactivity among women. The first factor is educational attainment. Higher educational attainment means a lower likelihood of being economically inactive. Relative to men, women often have lower educational attainments that are valued by the market, so the inactivity rate among women is higher. Second factor is family. Having children and a partner often push women to shift their time allocation away from market-based work more towards care responsibilities. Thus, women with children and cohabitating with a partner are more likely to be inactive. Third, especially for ethnic minority women, Not being born in the UK can increase the likelihood of being inactive. This largely reflects their lower language proficiency and social networks. Fourth, relevant for all women are the gender roles and attitudes. There is an increasing recognition that gender norms can influence the prioritization of time between domestic and paid work for women, who otherwise may have similar educational attainment and family structure. To ethnic minority women compared to white women on these factors. I use data from the UK Household Longitudinal Study to look at the characteristics of women by ethnicity. The ethnic groups we focus on are Indians, Bangladeshis, Pakistanis, Caribbean, and other Black women. Ethnic minority women are significantly more likely to be born outside the UK, while Indian and other Black women are more likely to have education beyond compulsory years. Pakistani, Bangladeshi, and Caribbean women are less likely to have education beyond compulsory years relative to white women. All ethnic minority women are more likely to have children. Asian women are more likely to live with a partner relative to white, Caribbean, and other Black women. Other than Indian and other Black women who have higher educational qualifications relative to white women, all characteristics of the ethnic minority women make them more likely to be economically inactive. There are not many data sets which, on a large scale, collect information on gender roles and attitudes. UK Household Longitudinal Study is one of the few data sets that collect this information. All individuals, men and women, are asked a series of statements. To each statement, the individuals can respond on a 5-point scale, going from 1 to indicate strong disagreement with the statement to 5 indicating strong agreement with the statement. The 3 statements we want to focus on are: husbands should earn, wives should stay at home. Preschool children suffer if mother works. Family suffers if mother works full time. There is a significant variation in the response to the questions from women of different ethnic groups. While 70% of white women strongly disagree that the husband should earn and the wife should stay at home, this is as low as 34% for Pakistani women. 17% of white women agree or strongly agree with the statement that preschool children suffer if mother works. It's 55% for Pakistani and Bangladeshi women expressing agreement or strong agreement with this statement. Similarly, a higher proportion of ethnic minority women express agreement or a strong agreement with a statement that the family suffers if the mother works full time. Overall, ethnic minority women tend to have more traditional gender norms, which is likely to increase their inactivity rates. Next, we look at how these factors explain the ethnicity gap. The inactivity rate for white women in the age group 25 to 34 is 17%. Without taking into account any background characteristics relative to whites, all ethnic minority women are more likely to be inactive. This is shown by the light blue line labeled raw in the graph. Caribbean women are 2.5 percentage points more likely to be inactive relative to white women, whereas Pakistani and Bangladeshi women are 33 and 28 percentage points more likely to be inactive. Next, we control for educational attainment, family structure, and the place of birth of women and see if the differences in these controls can explain some of the gaps. In our figure, the dark blue bar labeled controls shows the ethnic gaps in inactivity once these background characteristics are taken into account. What we find is that once we control for education, family structure, and where the woman is born, the ethnic gaps start to narrow. The difference between white women and other black women is no longer significant. While the gap between white and Asian women remains significant, it reduces by 5 to 8 percentage points. Last, we control for the gender norms held by women. The orange bar reflects the ethnic gap we would observe if we control for background characteristics and gender norms. Once we control for the gender norms, the ethnic gap between Pakistani and Bangladeshi women relative to white women halves. The raw gap of Pakistani women goes down from 33% to 18%, and for Bangladeshi women, it goes down from 28% to 13%. The ethnic gap between Indian women and white women does not change much even after controlling for all factors, including the gender norms. So, what do we have here? Ethnic minority women, relative to their white peers, have significantly higher rates of economic inactivity. Inactivity rates at almost 50% are highest among Pakistani and Bangladeshi women. Focusing on the early labor market outcomes of women aged 25 to 34 years old, we find background characteristics of women, like education, family structure, and where they were born, explain all the gap in the inactivity rates between white and Caribbean and other black women. If we further control for gender norms, gap in the inactivity rates between white and Pakistani and Bangladeshi women reduces by half. Recommendations going forward. While there is an increasing recognition that gender norms are important in explaining the labor market choices that women make, we need more understanding of how these interact with other characteristics of women, that is, their education and family responsibilities. This is for all women and not just ethnic minority women. However, these gender norms are more important for women from some ethnic minority groups. Any discussion we have in the policy space about economic inactivity should take this into account. While gender norms are slow to change, they reflect both social conformity and social learning, so can be shaped by information. Dissemination of information on economic activity and inactivity of women, an attitude towards it, could speed up social learning. On the positive side, we know that inactivity rates among younger women aged 16 to 24 years old are much lower, and the gap between white and ethnic minority women in this age group has been decreasing over time. This reflects that while gender norms are slow to change, they can be shaped.
The author would like to thank the Leverhulme Trust Research Fellowship, which funded this work, and the Higher Education Innovation Fund grant, which made the dissemination of the findings possible. The data creators, depositors, copyright holders, and funders bear no responsibility for the analysis or interpretation of the data presented here.